Welcome to the Legendarium. I am your host, Todd Wente. Hey, Craig's letting me host an episode again. What a wonderful thing. Today we're going to be going over Cytonic, the latest installment in Brandon Sanderson's Skyward series. And today we have with me Kenn.
Hey.
Wave, Kenn.
I'm waving.
Are you waving?
I'm waving. I'm looking. I'm waving.
And we have Stephanie.
Hi.
And I am so glad that we have the three of us. It feels like forever since we've done an episode.
Has been.
The last time that we did an episode was Expanse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That ended on such a
high note.
Oh my goodness.
That was an experience.
Well, it's good that we can come back to something slightly more cheerful.
It's safe to say it was
Maybe.
not Stephanie's favorite series.
Well, but
hopefully this one's a little bit more.
Hopefully this one will be more enjoyable. Before we dive too deep into the episode, we'll do our regular housekeeping. For those of you that might be new to the podcast, you can reach out to us on thelegendariumpodcast.com. You can find us online. You can find us anywhere you normally find your podcasts, through Stitcher, through Podbean, through Apple, through Spotify. I find us on Spotify. I've given up finding us anyplace else. I can't even find myself anywhere. So, but please, in addition to all of that, join us on our Discord server.
Yeah.
We have a great community on Discord, and we love interacting with you folks there. Everybody else interacts more than I do because I'm just a little bit busy lately, but I do try to make an appearance once in a while. Find us anywhere that you can find us, and we will engage with you as well.
By the way, if you want something a little bit different and need something fun, the fitness channel on our Discord server.
We have a fitness channel?
We have a new fitness channel on our Discord server. It is fun.
I might tap into that one.
It's Discorders and Legendarium folk talking about what they're doing for activity. Some of our Discord listeners.
I feel like it's really just our listeners and Kenn talking about what they're doing.
Maybe I need to get in there to try and make it a little less Kenn.
I'm not going to lie. It's not even me. Some of our Discord listeners are
hardcore,
really hardcore.
Okay.
In terms of biking, rowing, running.
Very cool.
I'll feel out of place then.
They go at it.
Stephanie, will you feel out of place in such a place?
I won't go there, so no.
Okay. Well, there we go.
I won't feel out of place.
When there's a fitness pizza in my mouth channel, I'll be there.
And with that said, why don't we go ahead and have Kenn give us a wrap up on, or a recap. A recap. There we go. A recap on Cytonic. Kenn,
all right.
Take it away.
Blue Flight, fall in. Nerf herders on the buttons. There's Crim Spackle over there talking in the mic.
Spackle.
And new Blue Flight member, So. As in SEW, So.
Thank you.
A needle pulling thread.
That's just going to be it. Like, it's going to be call sign So.
So.
A needle pulling thread.
Gosh,
I kind of derailed you on that
this
one.
Derailed faster than usual.
Who had 30 seconds?
I'm sensing a theme for the show. Time has passed since precocious Defiant Defense Force Wonder Pilot and blossoming Cytonic Jedi Knight Spencer Nightshade saved an enclave of her mortal enemies from their own foisted petard. I don't know what it means. It just sounded clever when I wrote it at 2:30 in the morning.
Foisted petard?
Petard. Yeah. Anyway, we don't actually know how much time has passed because time works differently in the Nowhere, and she stands as the warrior at the gate, halts a rampaging Delver attack on the superiority by taking the demon down and pops it and her over into Nowhere Land, where we find very quickly that Delver Land is really not as scary as our collective imagination led us to believe. She basically steps into the shattered plains of Roshar, meets some new friends, which is good because her old friends are practically non-existent in this book. She meets Imbot's original pilot, if you're not watching this episode, I hope you could feel my air quotes. She becomes a pirate and immediately starts to lose the memory of those closest to her, but problems of the morally gray variety arise when the resident Lost Boys try to talk Spin into staying in Nowhere Land, and the Delvers offer a truce to let her somewhere friends live if she'll just go away. You can see the appeal. It would allow Spin to lead the life she's always wanted, full of dogfights with toy guns and wandering the land, kind of like Green Day on their Boulevard of Broken Dreams or Sam Elliott in every beef commercial. But Spin... Todd, I got Todd.
The Sam Elliott line is awesome.
Anytime I can get Todd is a good day. But Spin, you stay over there and laugh. I'm going to just keep going.
Okay, keep going.
Spin soon comes to her senses when the inevitable Sander dump comes. She recognizes that the Delvers were going to double-cross her all along, and they actually are the evolution of the original AI from the 22nd century. You got to read Defending Elysium, by the way. Where did I go? Oh, yeah. Chet is actually the Delver that she befriended a book ago wearing a Chet suit. Imbot is actually an evolved Delver, which is why they have it in form. And Doomslug is just darn adorable. It all leads to the noble sacrifices of Chet Delver and Imbot so that Spencer et al. Can get back to get out of Wonderland, where she finds some weirdness in the somewhere that will certainly be important in the next book. I don't really have a lot of questions that we aren't going to go over, but the one question I do have is, so Tolkien was a Delver. Who was the original Delver? I'm guessing probably like Plato. Maybe. I don't know.
Socrates.
I'm just wondering who you thought,
Plato, Socrates,
who
morons.
maybe the original Delver was. That we'll throw that out to the listeners also. Who was the original Delver?
That might be interesting.
Yeah. Anyway, signing off. Go.
All right. I mean, that's almost...
Well, in that case, let's just wrap up there.
It almost leaves me speechless when he does something that well.
I don't know what to say now.
Foisted petard is where I kind of got
Foisted
stuck.
on their own petard.
and then he uses Sam Elliott. So I think, I mean, I literally am trying to recover. What were your, it says right here, overall impressions. What were your overall impressions of the book, Stephanie? We've already heard Kenn's, or part of Kenn's at least.
I liked it. Overall, as the whole book series, this is probably my least favorite of the books of this one, but I like it. I wish I had a little bit more of the outside world in this book. I was reading up on just kind of trying to catch up and get ready for the podcast a half an hour ago, and read that originally Sanderson kind of was thinking about doing a multi-point of view during this book, and I think I might have liked it better if he had. But now we have the novellas, and that's kind of the direction he went with instead. So, which I didn't. I loved the novellas during the same time frame while Spin is in the nowhere.
Yeah.
I kind of just wish I knew more of the big picture than just hers, because as fun as hers is, I didn't feel like it was really driving the overall story forward. It was just a fun book.
It felt very much like, if you've read the Dresden Files, it felt a lot like Ghost Story, where it's kind of like this palate cleanser / exposition book that doesn't really... It's not really exciting or drive the action forward. It just kind of fills in some holes and sets a little bit of table for when we get back to the real action, which I guess is going to be in Defiant, I think is the fourth book.
Yeah.
And so, I would have loved to have seen anybody else. I mean, really, but at the same time, I feel like that was the point, is that, okay, let's clear some stuff up with Spencer, give her a chance to... go to Cytonic finishing school and juice up her powers a little bit, and then we'll get her back to the real world, which is where she ends up in the end. But it all feels very, I don't know if transitory is the right word. It feels very placeholder.
Yeah,
a little bit.
It felt like it was Dagobah from The Empire Strikes Back, but instead of Dagobah as these little vignettes, it was an entire movie of vignettes. And I recognize that it was, we did answer some really critical questions, but I did not enjoy the book. I liked it enough, but it wasn't one that I was saying to myself, boy, I'm really looking forward to kind of going back and pulling this apart and looking for some stuff. I read it once and I was like, okay, well, let's move forward, please. I'm ready for the rest. I actually thought that this was going to be one of those books that was going to be split in half, and half was going to be in the nowhere, and then she was going to come back with her knowledge gleaned from the nowhere and kick some serious butt.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't get that. I was kind of, when I realized that all that was going to happen was she was just going to get out of the nowhere at the end of this book, I was like, okay, that was not what I was expecting. So
yeah, it was a long book for, I felt, what could have been a story told in a lot shorter amount of time. Like I almost wish I got a book and this was the novella.
I agree.
Like
I agree.
give me Spin's version in the novella, which would have been weird on the overall thing, but I don't know how they all came out because I think the novellas came out before Cytonic, right?
Yes, they did.
I read Cytonic first and then I read the other two novellas.
Oh, okay.
And that got me more excited for what's coming now because I think if I ended on Cytonic, I'd be like, oh, well, if I have to wait 12 more years to get another book from this series from Sanderson, I that's fine. Like, okay, I'll probably forget. But with the novellas, I'm excited. I was way more excited to continue the story.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you never have to wait very long for another book from Sanderson.
Yeah,
so that's not a problem.
But another one from this series might be a little while.
It's
we'll see.
series you need to wait for.
I don't know if he needs a good palate cleanser in between actual books. He'll just write this one.
So are you saying that Skyward is the palate cleanser for Way of Kings?
I'm saying that Skyward is the palate cleanser for us for reading Way of Kings. I don't know if it's necessarily his palate cleanser for writing it. It feels like a series that he writes kind of as a writing exercise in between real stories. And that's not to. I don't want to say that as saying this is not a real series because it feels very real. I mean, it's a young adult series, so maybe it doesn't feel as epic. Yeah, and it's not as epic. So I'm trying to backtrack now because I feel like I unintentionally disparaged. I unintentionally disparaged this entire series, which it's not. This series is fantastic, but it's smaller. It's not an epic fantasy series, and so it's an easy read. Personally, I want to go back through and read Cytonic again because as much as I felt like it didn't carry the weight of the first two books, there are several questions in there and several points that I found very interesting that I want to go back and look at again, such as, for example, Imbot being, an evolved Delver, basically. It's like, and Chet was one of the original Delvers. All of a sudden, spoilers, by the way, it's been a while since it came out, so I think we're safe to say spoilers. But
I think anybody who listens watching to us, or listening to us.
So anyway, but
we should just put a big spoiler alert at the beginning of the episode. We just should say that. Maybe I'll mention that. We'll fix it in post.
But but basically, we get the same customary Sanderson info dump in the third act, and all of a sudden we have all these things that we find out, like Delvers were original AI, and Imbot is a Delver, and all of these things. And then there are these pieces of all of this stuff that Spencer can do that other Cytonics probably can't do, or they can eventually do, but she can just do them better. Basically, there's a lot to unpack after we really get into it, and so at first I go, yeah, this isn't that big of a book, but then it's like, oh yeah, now I see a lot of stuff.
As far as the pieces of information that we're getting combined with the novellas, finding out about the different kinds of Cytonic powers, because we really only discover two additional powers. One of them, the ability to lengthen life, we find out about because Chet, the original Chet, the real Chet, did that for a long time. Not as long as we were believing, but for a very long time. And Spence's ability to listen to the stars, to connect to a star-like power, very different than the rest of the Cytonic powers. But when we find out about mind blades in one of the novellas, we find out about that in Read On, where the one character can throw bolts of energy with their mind that can destroy things in the physical world. And when we learn that, and that you should not squeeze a red and black slug because you're going to wind up having your face covered with toilet paper from looking like you've shaved your own face off.
Yes.
We do get a glimpse that there's a lot more that could have been done. Again, I go back to it, like the Dagobah training scene. You could have learned a lot more, Luke, before you left. Well, I feel like Spencer could have learned a lot more about how to use her Cytonic powers, but we've pulled her out and we've given some of that to some other characters.
Yeah.
At first when I was reading that, I was like, I'm not sure if I like that. I kind of wanted Spensa to be more powerful. I'm used to the idea of of the main character that we're following being the one that has the driving force. But as I thought about it more and more, I really like the idea that this has become a very ensemble group. It's not just Spensa's story. It's becoming the story of these other characters and their other skill sets. So I kind of liked that. I still feel like it took us a long time to get there. But I kind of like that as a perspective.
I like the novellas for fleshing that out. Absolutely. Like you say, it kind of gives us some other characters that have some importance. Most of the series feels like Spensa and her sidekicks, the sidekicks of Spensa and stuff, which I guess isn't every book kind of that way when it's central around one point of view. But it's fun to see all of these other pieces and how they work. For example, the slugs. Doom Slug, we find out when they travel through the nowhere, and only which we find out. How do we want to? I don't know how we want to craft this so that we talk about the novellas versus Cytonic, but
however you'd like, Ken. You started the process.
All right. Well, we find out in Cytonic or not in Cytonic. We find out in Sunreach that there are different types of slugs for different types of Cytonic activity, and the yellow and blue slugs, the Doom slugs, are the
hyper jumpers.
The hyper jumpers, yes. And so we find out in Cytonic that Doom slug and basically the hyper jump slugs hide as items, inanimate objects in the nowhere, so that they can escape the Delver eyes, because the Delvers don't like them either, which is interesting to find out after 2 books and 2 novellas. That it's, as long as you have a slug, you can jump through the nowhere without attracting the attention of the Delvers, which is something that is concerning through the previous books. And now we find out why. And so again, it's one of those things that this is just kind of fleshing out the universe and showing us what it's about. But I don't know where I'm going with that.
It feels like all of us have kind of identified the same thing. This gave us some good information, but maybe it could have been done a little more quickly, or it could have been done in conjunction with a little more action, a little more driving of the primary ideas behind the series, without spending quite so much time wandering around. You said the Shattered Plains, I say Dagobah, tomato. Yeah. It kind of works out the same.
Neverland, Wonderland. It's
kind of, I got the feeling it's more of a very
same.
Peter Pan kind of book, where she needs to go there to live out her childhood fantasies of the dog fighting without the risk of losing, because that's always been a big weight on her and her battles, is that she always fears about losing people and what that does to her mentally, to try and continue moving forward with what she knows that she has to do. So to be in this adventure place of her dreams, I can understand, especially at the very end when she's given the option to stay.
Yeah.
What a big deal and what a big choice that would have to be for her, to be like, oh, well, I can just live out as a child and be one of those lost boys doing what she loves, or she has to decide, no, I'm going to go back, I'm going to grow up. It felt very Peter Pan-esque to me in that, especially listening to Kenn's. I don't think I put those two together until Kenn was
until he did it.
Giving his recap and mentioned Neverland. And I was like, oh yeah, definitely, there's a definite connection between those two kind of stories, where her in the end, Spensa decides to leave, go home. She grows up. And I think this was an important journey for her to have.
Yeah.
Because she also realizes the importance of her friends, the importance of teamwork. I think before, she felt so much of that weight on her own shoulders, like, I have to do this. I have to be the one that saves my friends. It's my responsibility, even though as she's not the one in charge, because that's Jorgen. Like, she's not the leader, but I think she personally just felt that responsibility of putting everything right. Or at the end of this book, I feel like she's finally going to come home realizing it's not all, she doesn't have to do it alone.
Yeah.
That she has this fantastic group of people that she can learn from, she can teach, and there's a lot more teamwork in that, which I love when you were talking about the different Cytonic abilities, and that the fact that Spin doesn't have them all, that there are other people with stronger abilities that she can learn from.
And what a nice way of connecting a little bit of reality. I mean, I realize we're talking about a science fiction story and all those kinds of things, but what a nice impact. None of us in the lives that we lead are sufficient to solve all of the problems that we face. We need each other, and we need other individuals, whether those people are people that are in our lives for a period of time and then they're gone, or they're in our lives for the rest of our lives. We need help. We all need others. And this book did a nice job of setting up that kind of a process for Spensa to discover. The other thing that I found really interesting about this, and Stephanie, you mentioned, she can teach. Brandon Sanderson has set her up with a skill of being able to help others develop skills. I have, having been a teacher for years and years, decades now, I understand, I appreciate that is a unique skill. Sometimes we say anybody can do it. If you can't do it, then you're going to be a teacher. Well, that's not necessarily true.
Teach.
No.
And I've heard that a number of times, and every time I do, I want to punch somebody in the face. That's a different story. But my anger management issues, maybe we need an anger management channel on Discord. But Spensa discovers nicely, partly because Chet helps her discover.
Is it Chet that she has that conversation with about teaching?
Chet and
she has a conversation about becoming a teacher.
I believe it's with Chet. She has that conversation. She has a conversation with Hesho about.
But she also has the conversation
about going back
with Peg about it as well.
Oh, right.
They all kind of have part of that conversation with her. And as she starts helping the pirates figure out new skills and techniques and all these different kinds of things, I was like, okay, nice job of setting up a flight trainer for all of the and eventually, in conjunction with other individuals, probably a Cytonic trainer. For this kind of a process as well.
Is this the natural progression? It seems like every book we've got Spen taking a trainer role. Like in the last one, she has to teach these misfits from the superiority how to fly. Now she's got to teach these pirates how to fly. So next book it's going to be now she's got to teach these fledgling Cytonics how to Cytonic. And here she is. Every book she's got to channel her inner Cobb and figure out how to teach somebody something.
So
it feels like that's a very recurring theme through all these books, and I don't know if it's intentional, but
so one of the parts of the story that I both enjoyed and was a little frustrated by was the big pirate dogfight scene.
Okay.
And normally I would say, what do you guys think? But I want to throw this out and see if you guys can convince me that I am absolutely missing the point. I felt like that scene was thrown in as a kind of like splashing in some flavor to say this is a science fiction series, so let's make sure we keep some space flight and space dogfighting going on in this.
Are you talking about the dueling she does at the end? Okay.
Yes.
I was like, where's the big dog fight
It's
scene?
the big dogfight with Hesho.
Yes, it's the duel that she does.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes, okay.
And I kind of felt like, I mean, I get how it was constructed in the plot to kind of pull everything together and say, this is how we're going to beat the superiority and all these different kinds of things. But to throw that in just felt like it was a practice about how am I going to, or maybe a place to practice Brandon's investigation of how to use Cytonic abilities, a magic system, in conjunction with science fiction. And I found myself thinking, I wonder if this is his place to begin practicing what he's going to do with the sci-fi portion when we get into phase 3 of Mistborn. Did either of you, am I completely off base? Did either of you think of that, or am I just overanalyzing stuff again?
First of all, the space era is.
I'm going to tell you right now
Is that era
that
4?
our
Era 4,
resident Mistborn person over there is saying it's phase 4.
Ken corrected me as well.
Yeah.
I apologize.
It's phase 4.
Yeah. Era 3 is going to be the modern day.
Yeah,
and
we
then
have modern
era
day, and
4
then
is
you have
going to be the
futuristic.
space.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought we were as modern as we were going to get. So
there you go.
there we go.
It invalidates your entire argument. Sorry.
No, it
No.
just
In that
changes
case-
a number.
In that case, no. See, you're wrong. So
There you go.
let's see. What else would you like to
All right.
talk about?
That's right. You missed,
Okay, I'm done. I'll just close my notes down.
you missed a
and,
comma. Your entire argument is invalid. No, I think I can't argue with your point. I will say that,
But that wasn't something that you picked up
but it's
on
not.
and said,
It's not something that I thought was out of place or was thrown in. It's not something that I felt like that because I was reading it into the bigger picture, which was how all of these pirate factions were secretly working together under the nose of the superiority to take down the superiority. You know what I mean? And it was, well, using the toy lasers and everything, which that alone felt very not real to me. Not like the situation is we can play pretend all day because we have no consequences to our actions.
we don't starve to death.
Yeah, we don't starve to death.
We're not gonna
We don't
shoot each
actually
other
hurt
down.
each other. At the end, we go home, and tomorrow we get to do it all again. So it all felt very. All the pirates are playing pretend pirate, and everything, which we have covered. We don't need to go over it again. But it showed that even in that, there's the bigger goal, which is to unify eventually and take down the superiority, or to capture their little piece of superiority control, which might come in handy next book, because I don't know if it's a prediction or talking about predictions for the future, but here we have now set up when Spencer gets back to the somewhere with her devices and her people and everything, and she's got allies now in the nowhere,
Yeah.
including a Delver, who now they can come together and kind of attack from two fronts, the superiority or Wenzik's branch of the superiority that's going to try to use these Delvers to exert control. So now we've got the two fronts basically.
Yeah.
Well, and we know that the Nowhere is definitely going to play a part in the next book because Mbot's still there.
Yeah.
She's
Yes.
told that Mbot is still alive.
Right.
But he's still in the Nowhere. And she's somewhere along the way going to have to go get him back.
Oh, yeah.
Or
Yeah,
figure out
absolutely.
what's going to happen with Mbot.
Or figure out how to communicate with him from her side, and
How that's all going to play out.
yep.
So for when we're thinking about major scenes, I mean, that scene where Mbot says to Spencer, "Oh, I understand now." Was that a big impact scene for you guys, or was it kind of one of those where it's like, "Oh yeah, I see this coming. It's not a big deal."
Mostly that was that for me. It was like,
Was it?
Yeah, I kind of.
You heartless son of a gun.
Mbot's evolution has kind of been tracking this way anyway, so it's not like it was a surprise, and I guess it wasn't very emotionally overwhelming because,
Do you have emotions, Ken?
I mean, I love Peppermint so much it makes me cry sometimes.
Okay, we're done with you.
I
What do you think,
strangely don't
Stephanie?
believe you.
About the fact that he loves Peppermint so much he cries,
Yeah.
or that?
Yeah, I don't believe that.
All right,
But
that's fine. It's probably untrue anyway.
I think it was well set up. Like, I still think for me, that moment when Mbot makes that sacrifice, or what feels like is going to be that sacrifice, that I felt emotional about it, but I also didn't feel like it came from nowhere. And I loved the fact that he used that made you look joke that she's been playing on him that entire time to get away with it.
Yeah.
So I had an emotional connection to it. And I don't know, maybe it's also partially because I've had several conversations with my child lately about the whole idea of sacrificing the one for the good of the all kind of thing. And that's obviously exactly what he did, is he had no idea whether he was going to survive that or not. And the fact that he had grown enough as an AI with his emotions and his feelings. I think that's probably one of my favorite things about this book. Wasn't necessarily Spin's journey, but it's Mbot's. I love watching Mbot from that moment when he makes the decision to rescue her at the end of the first book, that Cobb comes in and flies Mbot to save her. And obviously, like, that was a big step for Mbot as an AI, as a character, as a person, whatever you want to call him.
He creates a new subroutine.
Yeah. And so watching his journey through all of these books is to really where he's like this sentient being. It's it's not just a computer program who's programming himself. It's a person who is learning and growing and on the fly, just as life throws things at him. I think he has especially in this book, he has a more interesting journey than Spin does.
I would say so.
I will confess that there might have been a couple of tears that popped into my eyes.
Now that I believe
at that moment, and I think for me it was the idea of volitional sacrifice, of an individual making a choice that they know will be not good for them, but good for someone else. And I think that really is at the heart of what a lot of humanity is all about. And in that moment, I, for me at least, that was the transition moment from Mbot being a fairly predictable character with a fairly predictable artificial intelligence, whether it's Brent Spiner playing Data or it's Anthony Daniels playing C-3PO. There are characters who have an inhumanity about them, and their search is to become human. And in that moment, Mbot gets it. And maybe it was just because it was cold outside and I had my windows rolled down because it was really warm in my car. But that was a very touching scene for me. And I while the rest of the book may have felt like a little bit of a plod along the way, I got to that scene and I was like, okay, this is a good enough payoff that I'm finding it worth having waded through a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
From that standpoint, I would say that it was masterfully done, masterfully set up. So I liked that. Were there other scenes that were really impactful for you guys? Oh dear, maybe I shouldn't ask that question. You guys are both making faces.
Well, I'm trying to think. I remember.
Is that one of the stupid questions that I asked and you said that you were going to make faces at me when it happened?
I think the Mbot stuff at the end was the most emotionally impactful, but I thought there were plenty of meat and potatoes scenes, especially the interludes. I thought the interludes were
cool.
There's this one scene
well.
that I know is Ken's all-time favorite, and it takes place in the when Spin is looking at her reflection, and you see like Jorgen in the cockpit, and they have this lovely moment of just Jorgen finally sees her, and I know it's Ken's favorite.
Wasn't that in the middle of a dog fight too?
Yes.
That Jorgen just
As a
completely
matter.
gives up fighting, because that's exactly what Kenn would do. He would stop fighting just because he saw the woman that he loves.
in reflection. Yep. She's here.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to make myself cry on that one because I think that would be when I read that in the novella, I was like, oh man, Ken's gonna hate this.
I didn't. I hate you guys right now. No, I don't.
Well,
I don't even hate you guys right now.
I'm not surprised.
It was fine. It was interesting because, I mean, we've seen something like that before where you can see somebody in reflection, but not in real life, in other science fiction shows or whatever. So it was an interesting take on how you can cytonically speak, I guess, between the nowhere and the somewhere, at least to another cytonic being. I think Jorgen has been set up to be very impactful.
Oh yeah.
In the next book.
Well, he's an admiral now.
Obviously, yeah, he's an admiral now.
Whatever happened to Cobb?
Somehow, we don't know. Something has happened to Cobb, and it could have just been that he was not there. You know, he could be, I don't know, in this superiority stockade still. He could be, in control.
He wasn't doing good, though, at the end of that. Was it Redawn at the end of that novella?
At the end of Redawn.
When you find out that he's been replaced by whatever.
By a diome?
Yeah, whatever replaced him. He wasn't doing good. So I could understand why Jorgen might have replaced him as admiral.
Yeah, but think about it. If all of the youngest, one of the youngest flights of all of the flights that are there, he winds up being promoted to admiral.
And he's only like 19.
Right. You have to sit there and I have to sit there and say to myself, how much trouble are they really in if they're promoting a 19-year-old with less than a year's worth of combat experience to be the admiral?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. So it'll be interesting to see. And he's proved, plenty of times that he is plenty competent
He's capable.
in being in command. He'll follow the rules to the letter.
As long as he
way.
doesn't squeeze a red and black slug, he'll probably be all right.
Right. And so I'll be interested to see what his part is in that. And we've got the framework of a new alliance to take on the superiority. So
Yeah, what did you think about maybe we can transition into talking about the novellas just a little bit.
Okay.
We've kind of danced around them a little bit, but the novellas set up some really nice pieces that connect and that keep the major framework of the story that we followed at the very beginning moving forward. How did you like the novellas?
I loved the novellas.
I liked them a lot. I liked that they added to the story without just kind of being space fillers.
Yeah.
So they're not. It's not important to read them in terms of the main storyline. You can read the novels and still get the frame or the storyline.
I might feel
But they
differently with the
add-
last book, though.
Yeah.
Like, I read Cytonic without having read the novellas and was absolutely fine. But now, having read the novellas, I'd be worried to read Defiant without having read the novellas.
Yes.
Of knowing what happened in the real world while Spin was in the nowhere.
Yeah.
It really, because it takes you from the moment Spin leaves, you follow FM's story. And then when FM's novella ends, you pick up with Alanique all the way back up to where Spin comes back.
Yeah.
So you
Right.
you have that now know this is what everyone was doing while Spin was in the nowhere doing her play fighting. So
Right. So it'll be interesting to see how they reconcile that.
I would
Like,
recommend
while you
that.
were
Like,
while
read
you were
those.
busy being over there, hanging out and playing pirate, we were busy dying.
Yeah,
So-
there's a really one of the really powerful pieces for me from those novellas was FM dealing with survivor's guilt and her feeling up, because we got some glimpses of the fact that Spin just kind of shuts down and tries to avoid thinking about those kinds of things, and I don't think it would have made sense. I think her journey in Cytonic gives her a chance to explore some of that, but FM's doesn't have that luxury. She gets to do it right now, and her exploration of avoiding connection, trying to avoid getting connected with anybody because then you just have to watch them die anyway. What a well-crafted storyline to run through, and maybe I thought it was well-crafted because I've been working with some of my friends who are veterans who struggle with the idea that they've come home. How do you transition? How do you leave all of that behind? How do you connect? And so for me, it was a very poignant piece of that story that was being set up. I will admit that the comic relief of, and I've mentioned it 3 times now. This is my last time. The comic relief of FM trying to tell Jorgen, don't squeeze the slug. I'm not squeezing the slug. You're squeezing the slug. I'm not squeezing the slug. And then all of these cuts appearing on his face. Yeah, you were squeezing the slug. And then later on, that joke keeps coming back. Don't squeeze him. We get this. It's an evidence of some really good writing, and I think Brandon made a really good choice of someone to bring on to help write these novellas. Because they were able, the author, and I can't remember her name. I apologize.
Peterson.
Jancy Patterson.
Jancy,
Yes.
thank you. She really figured out and was able to mirror Brandon's style for this series very, very well.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like it didn't feel like a jarring change of writing style or a voice or any of those kinds of things. It was a very nice transition.
It was a good way to bring 2 secondary characters into more of a mainstream or main character or major character, I guess. Spence is the main character, so these are major characters but it was a good way to graduate them to major character status, so they have more importance, I'm assuming, coming up in the next book. And honestly, FM, I think, is just a fantastic character. I
love FM.
Yeah, the book the novella just fleshes her out so well and does a great job of giving her business, because really, I mean, she's just kind of a counterculture rebel who is she's going into the army to tick off mom and dad, and then she comes to find out she actually likes it. And it's great. And
Slug Wrangler.
What do they call it? She's the
slug.
The slug welfare specialist.
It's the welfare. The Jorgen calls her out. It's like, I didn't give you that job. You gave that job to yourself.
You took that job upon yourself. And I will be honest, right now, I think her and Rig, their little cute love story, is a lot more fun to me than Spence's.
Okay, I was like,
Jorgen's.
don't ruin this, Ken. I'm going to walk out.
It's believable.
Don't ruin this.
Theirs is a lot more enjoyable to me than Spence's and Jorgen's. I mean, I don't have a problem with Spence and Jorgen. I just think that Rig and FM are so much
they're just
more
cute.
adorable.
Spence and Jorgen's love story is believable from a teenager romance kind of but so is FM and Rig.
Yeah, and keep in mind,
Very
these are young
believable
adult novels.
From a teen standpoint, so I bought that too.
Why do your slugs know how to get to each other so quickly? No reason whatsoever.
No one has ever had to answer a question like that before, right?
That was a great...
How do you have a key to her place?
Why is it your slug that can get there so quickly? I don't understand this.
We've been working together.
Yeah. We've been working on this problem together. That's all.
They are cute. I just thought this is one of those like humorous kind of, I mean, we've all been teenagers in love kind of thing. Like, it was just funny and cute. It's a cute little love story.
How is that number on your speed dial? So if that was delightful, I have to say, Redon, I have this image of what this planet would look like with the floating trees. I'm if there was ever a Brandon Sanderson series that I wanted to see made for a reason, it's that's the reason. I want to see what that would look like constructed, the buildings built out of living trees and all of those kinds of things.
Oh yeah.
The imagery that was done with that is so unique. I've not for all the science fiction that I've read, I've not read about a gas planet
with the idea of the haze and everything underneath
will kill, or the miasma that will kill you,
and then you still have trees that are floating around and all. That was really creative, very unique. I liked it a lot.
Every time I think I've seen pretty much everything or a derivation of everything in science fiction, Brandon comes up with something that is really just unique. At least the way he does it is unique. Like, for example, the race of smells from Starsight. Yeah, the figments. I'm like, how do you come up with something like that? And then you had the crystal aliens in the nowhere.
That are in the nowhere. Those were pretty cool. That concept of that they grow into each other.
Yeah.
And,
and
grow into their
the
ships.
Cockpit. Yeah.
And the diones and everything.
And they just break a piece off and then they'll reconnect later.
I'm just going to leave a little piece of myself everywhere I go.
And he comes up with, and they're outrageous. Yeah. They're outrageous concepts, and he makes them all work. He just makes them all believable. That is the mastery of Brandon Sanderson.
So, as I think we've kind of come to the end of the things that we had to discuss. Anything that you really feel like you want to talk about that we haven't talked about?
Have you guys read Defending Elysium?
Not yet.
You got to read that. It was not even a novella. It was like a short story that Brandon wrote 20 years ago. I mean, basically like before Elantris was published, while he was still trying to get somebody to pick up his novels or try to get into grad school. And he just wrote this little short story while he was kind of trying to figure out where he was in life and all of that. And it basically became the impetus for the Cytoverse, which is where we're at now.
Okay.
And it even, a lot of that stuff with Jason Wright in the end of Cytonic is all referenced back to...
the first Cytonic.
Yeah, is all referenced back to Defending Elysium. So Jason Wright is the main character in that short story.
Good call.
So go back and read it. It's interesting. And I read it a couple of years ago, something like that. Just because it's published on his website, you can just go find it on dragonsteel.com. He's also publishing it as a short story. You can buy it on Amazon now. It's got cover art that's similar to the Cytoverse covers.
Okay, cool.
So I think that comes out next month being January, something like that. So
Good deal.
but you can read it for free. So, and it doesn't take long, an hour maybe.
I might have an extra hour.
Yeah.
In the midst of everything else going on. Stephanie, anything for you?
Not that comes to mind.
We probably are going to have somebody yelling, "You didn't talk about Hesho enough."
I mean, there's lots of stuff we really haven't talked about, but at the same time, I think more of it would be like we could delve into the novellas on their own and like more of the story of what happens. Like the fact that Jorgen and Alanik have created this huge alliance.
This alliance, yeah.
Between their two people. Like they did some massive work with Alanik and saving her rebel people because she had her own little rebel group that was happening with that. Like everything that was happening, all of the individual slugs and all the work they were doing in FM's story. I mean, there's a lot of little things, I especially think in the novella. Like I feel like we talked about Cytonic because really I don't know if there's been like these moments are these defining moments in Cytonic. We talked about like the two that are in there.
Yeah.
But we could delve into the novellas all on their own. But
We do have another novella that's dropping.
Yeah.
So maybe what we'll do is take a look at that third novella and then kind of reconvene and see if there's anything more that we'd like to talk about. At that point, maybe also let's check the Discord channel and see if there's things that people would like us to answer about this particular installment in the Cytoverse.
Discord.
And
Ask your questions.
See how that goes. What do you think?
yeah.
I'm very interested to see where Evershore fits because I think it was done on purpose that it is released after Cytonic. So I think it has to do with why is Jorgen an admiral and what's going on now that Spence is back.
Yeah.
That sort of stuff.
Or maybe what's going on with Mbot.
Maybe, but
The cover art is Jorgen in an admiral vest.
well, yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
There you go.
That's why I was like,
From
You
the
always-
voice somewhere.
Nerf Herder always is throwing stuff in on our radio channel. So thank you for keeping us focused. I think.
I could have called you out so many times in this episode. Don't even.
whatever.
Is he bucking for Admiral?
Who put himself on the bench for this episode?
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah, he did. And we love him for it.
So
All right. Well, I think that's our treatment of the Cytonic.
Cytonic.
There we go. I was going to say Cytoverse, and then I was going to say one of the. That's our treatment of Cytonic. That's our treatment of the novellas up to this point. We'll leave it open for a possible revisit, and wish everybody a wonderful day.